Hi, welcome to our channel Programming of Mind, where we accelerate your knowledge with concise, from high-value book summaries. Let's begin. The inner transformation, moving beyond the mind's dominance. We are often told that our thoughts define us, that who we are is the sum of our beliefs, memories, and perceptions. But what if we're much more than the thoughts running through our minds? What if, in fact, the mind is not the master of who we truly are, but merely a tool that can be used in service of a deeper truth? To understand this, we need to explore the idea of inner transformation, the shift from identifying with our thoughts to recognizing that we are the awareness behind them. This is a profound journey, one that requires us to move beyond the habitual thought patterns that dominate our daily lives. A story of liberation, the journey of Peter. Consider Peter, a man in his early 30s who had been struggling with anxiety for years. Peter believed that his constant worrying and overthinking were just a part of who he was. Every situation, whether personal or professional, was met with a cascade of fearful thoughts. What if I fail? What if people judge me? What if something bad happens? These thoughts consumed him. Peter tried everything: meditation, therapy, and reading self-help books, but nothing seemed to quiet the constant chatter in his mind. He would sit in meditation, but his thoughts would swirl relentlessly, making him feel frustrated and helpless. One day, Peter met an elderly man named Thomas, who had spent decades studying meditation and mindfulness. Over a quiet coffee, Peter shared his frustration about his inability to quiet his mind. Thomas smiled gently and said, "The mind isn't the problem, Peter. It's your identification with it that creates the struggle. What if you were to simply observe your thoughts, without judgment, without trying to change them?" Peter was skeptical, but he decided to give it a try. The next time he sat in meditation, instead of trying to push his thoughts away, he simply allowed them to be. He observed them as if they were clouds drifting by in the sky. Slowly but surely, Peter began to notice a shift. The thoughts were still there, but they no longer had the same grip on him. He realized that he was not his thoughts. He was the awareness that observed them. This realization was liberating. Peter's story highlights the core of inner transformation, the realization that we are not the mind, but the awareness that observes it. This shift in perspective is the beginning of true freedom. The nature of the mind, a tool, not the master. The mind is a powerful tool. It helps us solve problems, navigate the world, and make decisions. However, when we identify with the mind, we fall into the trap of believing that we are our thoughts. This creates a false sense of identity, where we are nothing more than a collection of thoughts, beliefs, and stories. In reality, the mind is not who we are. It is simply a tool that serves our deeper consciousness. When we can step back and observe our thoughts, rather than getting caught up in them, we begin to understand that we are much more than the mental chatter. We are the stillness behind it. Let's take Sarah, a woman who had spent most of her life struggling with low self-esteem. She constantly compared herself to others, believing that she was never good enough. These thoughts defined her sense of self-worth. But one day, during a conversation with a close friend, Sarah realized that her thoughts were not her reality. She had always believed that she was unworthy because of the thoughts she had about herself. But in that moment, she began to see that her true worth wasn't defined by her thoughts. Sarah began to practice observing her thoughts rather than identifying with them. She no longer judged herself for having negative thoughts. Instead, she simply let them come and go, like waves on the ocean. Over time, Sarah's sense of self began to shift. She started to feel more grounded and connected to her true essence, independent of the constant mental noise. The role of awareness in inner transformation. The key to moving beyond the mind's dominance lies in awareness. Awareness is the space in which thoughts arise, but it is not the thoughts themselves. It is the silent observer, the part of us that is always present and always aware. By becoming more aware of our thoughts, we can create a gap between ourselves and the mental noise. This gap is where transformation occurs. Maria, a successful artist, had always felt restless, constantly seeking approval and recognition for her work. She believed that her worth was tied to the praise she received from others. But after years of chasing external validation, she felt unfulfilled. One evening, Maria went to a quiet art gallery and sat in front of a painting that deeply moved her. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't thinking about her own art, her career, or what others might think of her. She was simply present, fully immersed in the moment. As she sat there, a realization washed over her. She didn't need external approval to feel complete. She was enough as she was. This realization was a result of her ability to step into the space of awareness. In that moment, Maria moved beyond her thoughts, beyond her constant need for validation, and experienced a deep sense of inner peace. The power of silence, quieting the mind's noise. In a world filled with constant noise, both external and internal, it can be difficult to find silence. But silence is essential for inner transformation. In the quiet moments, we can hear the deeper truths of who we are. Silence allows us to connect with our true essence, free from the distractions of the mind. Take John, a businessman who had always been on the go. His days were filled with meetings, phone calls, and emails. He felt like he was always doing something, but never truly living. One weekend, John decided to take a solo trip to a remote cabin in the mountains. For the first time in years, he had no agenda, no tasks to complete, and no one to answer to. As he sat in the stillness, John began to notice the constant stream of thoughts that had previously occupied his mind. He saw how these thoughts had shaped his perception of himself and his life. But in the silence, he realized that these thoughts were not who he was. The stillness became a mirror, reflecting his true self. Over the weekend, John began to experience a sense of peace that he had never known before. When he returned to his busy life, he carried that inner stillness with him. He no longer felt driven by the need to constantly be doing. He began to prioritize moments of silence, and in doing so, he discovered a deeper sense of connection to his own life. The practice of being, living beyond the mind's stories. True inner transformation requires us to move beyond the stories we tell ourselves. Our minds are constantly creating narratives about who we are, what we've done, and what will happen next. These stories keep us stuck in the past or future, preventing us from fully experiencing the present moment. Maria, mentioned earlier, experienced a profound shift when she stopped identifying with her story of needing validation. But this shift didn't happen overnight. It required practice. Every time she felt the urge to compare herself to others or seek approval, she reminded herself to step back into awareness and let go of the story. Instead of reacting, she simply observed her thoughts without judgment. Over time, Maria began to experience more freedom. She stopped defining herself by the stories she had told herself for years. Instead, she allowed herself to be, without the need to explain or justify her existence. She began to live more fully in the present, embracing the moment without clinging to the past or fearing the future. The power of inner peace, living beyond the mind. As we move beyond the mind's dominance, we begin to experience a deeper sense of inner peace. This peace is not dependent on external circumstances. It comes from within. It is the natural state of being when we are not caught up in the endless chatter of the mind. Take Helen, a retired teacher who had spent most of her life worrying about what others thought of her. But as she entered her 60s, Helen started to realize that she no longer had the energy to live in constant worry. She began to practice mindfulness, focusing on the present moment rather than replaying past events or projecting into the future. Over time, Helen found that her inner peace grew. She no longer felt the need to seek approval or constantly seek validation. She was content just being. Helen's story shows us that inner peace is a byproduct of moving beyond the mind. When we stop identifying with our thoughts, we connect to a deeper sense of stillness and tranquility. This inner peace doesn't require effort. It is simply the result of letting go of the mind's dominance and reconnecting with our true nature. Thank you for listening, and please like the video and subscribe for more great upcoming content that will put you in top 1% people in the world.